Hi everybody, it feels like day 100 of distance learning. I'm actually not sure what day it is. I think it's day like 8. But today we are starting reviewing for our Unit 4 test, which is going to be on Monday the 23rd. And we are going to take it day by day and look at one checkbox on our checklist each day. So if you can do the next 4 days without any help, then you are ready for the test. Our first checklist is being able to our first check mark on our checklist is being able to convert between percents, fractions, and decimals. So let's look at our warm-up. We have a table that we're going to complete, and it has 2 hints. The first hint is to turn a percent into a decimal, divide by 100, and our second hint is to turn a fraction into a decimal, divide the numerator by the denominator. So we're going to use the hints and hopefully be able to figure this out. So take 5 minutes and try this yourself. Okay, so to turn a percent into a decimal, it says that we need to divide by 100. So 36.5 divided by 100 is going to be 0.365. So that is my decimal. Now I want to turn it into a fraction. Well, we have talked about how the word percent can be broken into the words per, cent, or per 100. Because cent means 100. So what this means is a percent is out of 100. So you take your percent and you put it out of 100. So our percent is 36.5. So I'm going to do 36.5 out of 100. Pretty simple. If you have your percent, it should be extremely easy in turning it into a fraction and even a decimal. So now let's go ahead and look at our decimal. Well, to go from a percent to a decimal, we divide by 100. So to do the opposite, to undo that, I need to multiply by 100. So 1.27 times 100 is going to be 127. So this would be 127%. So if your decimal is larger than, is 1 or larger, then your percent is going to be 100% or larger, okay? So now let's go into a fraction. Well, we have a percent, we just got to put it out of 100. So another thing, if you notice, 127 is larger than 100, meaning we have more than 100%. Okay, you'll see that more in the lesson. So now we have our fraction 9/10. Let's use our second hint to turn a fraction into a decimal, divide the numerator by the denominator. So I'm going to take 9 and divide it by 10. And I'm going to get 0.9, so that's my decimal. And now that I know my decimal, I can turn my decimal into a percent by multiplying by 100. That's going to give me 90. So this is also 90%. Okay. Let's go ahead and look at our first task. So we're starting with percents and we're converting them between decimals and fractions. So this goes back to the warm-up. So I would like to, So let's use the first hint, which tells us that we need to turn percents into decimals by dividing by 100. So I'm going to take all of these and I'm going to divide them by 100. So the first one is going to be 2.39. You notice my decimal is larger than 1 because my percent is larger than 100%. So let's turn this into a fraction. Well, again, percent means per 100 out of 100. So it's 239 out of 100. Second problem, 57%. So I'm going to do 57 divided by 100, 0.57. And I'm going to turn it into a fraction by taking my percent, putting it out of 100. Okay. 8 divided by 100 is 0.08. And the fraction is 8 out of 100. 3.4 divided by 100 is going to be 0.034. And I'm going to take my 3.4, put it out of 100. And now I have 0.01, and I'm going to divide by 100, and it's going to be 0.0001. It's going to be 0.01 out of 100. Okay, now we have our decimals and we're turning them into percents and fractions. So up here we said, well, to go from a percent to a decimal, you divide by 100. So to undo that, I would multiply by 100. So I am going to take all my decimals and multiply them by 100 to get the percent. So the first one is 4.02. I'm going to multiply by 100, and it is going to be 402%. Now I'm going to take my percent and turn it into a fraction like we have been, and I'm going to take my percent and put it over 100. Okay, now I have 0.89. I'm going to multiply by 100 and get 89. So that'll be 89%, and now I'm going to take my 89% and put it out of 100. I'm going to take my 0.06, multiply by 100, and get 6. Oh, it's not working for me. And get 6. So it'll be 6%, which is 6 out of 100. 0.025 times 100 is 2.5%. And the fraction is 2.5 out of 100. Now last, 0.009 divided by, I'm sorry, not divided by, multiplied by 100. And that's going to be 0.9%. So what's different is we had the decimal 0.9 up here, which is 90%. Our decimal is 0.009, and that is only 0.9%. Okay, so that's a difference. Okay, so then a fraction would be 0.9 out of 100. Okay, last we have fractions, and we're going to turn them into percents and decimals. So, to turn a fraction into a decimal, divide the numerator by the denominator, divide the top by the bottom. So, our first one is 76 divided by 100, which is 0.76. And we can even look, and we know that this is out of 100. So then our percent is going to be 76 because a percent is out of 100. So that one was easy. Now we have 4/3. 4 divided by 3 is 1.3 repeating. So I'm going to show that in my decimal by doing 1.3 repeating. Oops. Or you could have the 3 dots behind it demonstrating that it goes on forever. Next, I'm going to turn it into a percent. Well, I have my 1.3 repeating. To go from a percent to a decimal, we divide by 100. So to go from a decimal to a percent, I'm going to multiply by 100. So I'm going to multiply my answer by 100, and I'm going to get 133.3 repeating, and that is my percent. And again, I'm showing that my 3 is repeating by having the little line over it, but you can have the 3 dots, or you can leave it as 133.3%. I will understand. So now we have 9 divided by 150, which is 0.06. Now I'm going to multiply that by 100, and I'm going to get 6%. We have 3 divided by 120, and that's going to be 0.025. And if I multiply that by 100, I am going to get 2.5%. And last but not least, we have 4 divided by 800, which is going to be 0.005. And if I multiply that by 100, I am going to have 0.5%, so half a percent. All right. So, how do you turn a percent into a fraction, a decimal? Well, a percent to a fraction, you take your percent and you put it out of 100. So if I have 36%, I'm going to do 36 out of 100. To turn a percent into a decimal, I'm going to take my percent and divide it by 100. So if I have 36%, I'm going to do 36 divided by 100. I would get 0.36. So to turn a decimal into a percent and a fraction, so from a decimal to a percent, I'm going to take my decimal and multiply by 100 to turn it into a percent. So if it is 0.36, I'm going to multiply by 100. That's going to give me 36%. Now if I'm trying to turn that decimal into a fraction, I would turn my decimal into a percent by multiplying by 100. And then I'm going to put it out of 100. I'm going to take whatever percent I find, and I'm going to just put it out of 100. So, for example, if I have 0.36, I'm going to multiply by 100. Put it out of, 100, and that is going to be 36 out of 100. Now, turning a fraction into a percent and a decimal, where the easiest thing is taking your fraction and turning it into a decimal. And to do that, I am going to take my fraction, which I'm going to say is a over b, and I'm going to do a divided by b. So if my fraction was 3 over 4, I would do 3 divided by 4, which give me 0.75. Now, if I want to turn my fraction into a percent, I'm going to convert it into a decimal. And then I am going to put it, okay, hang on. So I'm going to do A over B, A divided by B. So I'm turning my fraction into a decimal, and then I'm going to multiply it by 100. So again, if this was 3 over 4, I would do 3 divided by 4 and then multiply by 100, and I would get 75%. Okay. All right, if you have any questions, please email me. Please get on the Google Meet. Again, you have a test on Monday. You have a test on Monday. All right. Don't forget to do your Go Formative. I hope you guys have a great week. Bye.